So today, again, I will speak about what we've covered so far in the class, in the teaching. So what Holiness has been talking about today, Rinpoche will discuss that. Again, I will discuss that. So His Holiness started his teachings today by saying that if we have suffering, if we experience sufferings and problems, what we need to do is analyze the cause of suffering. We need to analyze the causes and conditions that give rise to suffering. So the actual text starts with discussing attachment and aversion, saying that these have their causes, these have arisen from the origin of not knowing reality, that is being opposed, that the mind is directly opposed to how phenomena really exist. It misperceives phenomena with regard to their actual existence. So that is the cause of all afflictions. So here there's an example is given. It comes from the sutras. Actually, the example is given in a different way, but here we can explain the object, or we can explain the example with regard to anger. So if you say, for instance, you perceive your reflection in the mirror, you perceive a reflection in the mirror. So at that time, for instance, you see a reflection of a negative expression, of a kind of rude expression. So there's a mistake here, because it's actually your own expression. So when it's actually mistaken here, it's actually one's own face that appears as being rude, as having this rude expression. In reality, it's one's own face. There's not another person. But one gets angry at that reflection in the face, thinking it's another person. So the Buddha therefore explains then, as in this analogy, so when we talk about desire, when we talk about anger, so all these arise as a result of a mistaken perception. So we superimpose an existence onto phenomena that they do not have, that they actually do not have in reality, and as a result of that, attachment and aversion arise. So likewise here with respect to here other systems, so here not Madhyamika, so not just the philosophical system of the Madhyamika, but other Buddhist philosophers, they would say that they would advise as part of one's practice that with regard to the object of one's anger, one should consider the fact as a remedy to the anger, one should consider the fact that the other person wants to be happy, does not want to experience sufferings and problems, and they don't have actual freedom with regard to the anger that they experience. So likewise here, when one sees the reflections of that rude kind of expression in the mirror, which is actually not there as a separate person, so at that time one should think, oh, there's no fold. I mean, what can they do? This other person, they're showing this kind of expression. They have no freedom in actuality. So one should apply it to that kind of reflection. So actually the sutra that has been mentioned with the reflection on the face, it's actually mentioned in the context of attachment. But anyway, so whether one focuses on this reflection, whether one generates compassion for this other person that one wrongly perceives, or one has anger, one generates anger towards that reflection, in both cases the mind just superimposes it, wrongly perceives there to be a person when in actuality there is no such a person. So this is true whether one generates compassion or anger. So from the Satantrika system upwards, it seems that within the Buddhist philosophical systems, the view is that when we talk about desire, so the object of the desire, it is not the case that the object is in and of itself kind of produces that type of desire, but it's coming from us imputing. So in actuality, there is not such an object, but we impute something onto the object. So this is why the desire arises. So, for instance, when another person kind of verbally insults us, or kind of expresses kind of a negative, expresses a negative face, like looks at us in a kind of abusive way, etc. So at that time we get angry, we become angry, aversion and anger arises, but then thereafter we go home and we continue to be upset with this person. So we feel insulted, this person has insulted us, we keep thinking about it, reflecting upon what they have done, we don't even sleep well at night. So we are angry that our anger continues to simmer in our mental continuum. So at that time, is the person actually there, or is the person just designated the person that we are angry with at that time? So, for instance, if Geshe Thupten Palsang, if Geshe gets angry with this person, so let's say this person was insulted Gela, for instance. So let's say now the other person who insulted Gela, or Geshe insulted Geshe, goes home, and at that time generates regret. Oh, I should have not insulted Geshe. Geshe is a good person. He's actually okay. I shouldn't have done that, and they generate regret. While I, at the same time, think this person is so bad, they insulted me, etc. So is there a contradiction or not with regard of my perception of that person? Isn't there a direct contradiction in the sense that the person has generated regret with regard to their actions, whereas I'm still thinking of them as someone very harmful, etc.? Isn't there a direct contradiction? So in reality, at the time when we're separate, I cannot really be angry with that person. So actually, I'm not angry with the reality here. I'm not really getting angry with a person who exists in reality. So actually, I'm getting angry with someone who I've just designated, who I've just created. My mind has just created this person in this sense. Because in actuality, who I'm angry with doesn't exist in the way in which I perceive him. So therefore, this object doesn't exist the way I perceive it. The person doesn't exist the way I perceive him. So according to the Satantrika school, the Satantrika or the Sutra school here, therefore, they would say with regard to reality here, yes, in reality, they would say in reality the person exists, but it's not, so they're not saying that the person doesn't exist in reality, but they still say that there is a gap, there is some gap between how I perceive this person, between how Geshe Thupten Palsang perceives this person and how the person actually exists. So there's this gap. It's not in accordance with reality the way Geshe Thupten Palsang perceives this person and how the person actually exists. So they wouldn't say that the person doesn't exist in reality, but they can still recognize this gap of how the person appears and how he actually exists. So the consequentialist school, they would say something different. They would say that in actuality, in reality, Geshe Thupten Palsang does not exist. So in reality, this person cannot dislike, the other person cannot dislike Geshe Thupten Palsang. In actuality, you cannot dislike Geshe Thupten Palsang because of the way he actually exists. So then, understanding that, one's anger can become a little weaker. It could decrease, actually. But the negative aspect is that no one would like Geshe Thupten Palsang because it doesn't exist in actuality, and again, no one would then also like Geshe Thupten Palsang. So here what it seems to be saying is that our aversion, our anger, that arises from desire or attachment. So here, according to the Sutra school, they're saying that it's attachment at the self, attachment directed towards the self. So that kind of attachment here, it does not really perceive the object of attachment correctly, in the sense that actually the object of attachment, the self, is impermanent. It is in the nature of suffering, but it doesn't perceive the object as impermanent in the nature of suffering. So therefore it's not seeing reality. So we talk a little bit from a coarser kind of, just to give a coarse kind of rough explanation here. So when we say my eye consciousness, my eyes or my eye consciousness here perceives something blue. So Geshe just held up an object that is blue. So my eyes see something that is blue. It seeps, and here we're not talking about a subtler type of level, we're talking about a coarser kind of level. In a sense, it seems that this blueness, this blue, kind of throws an aspect at the eye consciousness. Something comes towards the eye consciousness in the sense that the blueness, the aspect of blueness is thrown at the eye. This is why we see the blue. So therefore, here so this is the perception with regard to the eye consciousness and the blue. But when we speak of desire here these conceptual types of awarenesses, it's different, because when we look around, when our conceptual awarenesses perceive objects, so some conceptual minds, they generate, if you have one object, some conceptual minds generate desire, and with the same object, with regard to the same object. Another conceptual mind is generated in the nature of anger. Another conceptual mind arises as love. A third conceptual mind arises as a neutral mind. So this has to do with the perception of the object. So when I perceive the object here as someone negative, then someone as obnoxious, for instance, then anger arises. If I perceive them as beautiful, desire arises. If I perceive them as a mother or as a daughter, then love and so forth arises. So for some people, this is a mother, this is a daughter, a wife, a girlfriend, etc. So there's so many different conceptions, and therefore so many different feelings that arise. So if it was not coming from, if there wasn't some aspect of the mind having designated something onto the object, then you couldn't have these different types of perception of an object. The object would have to appear for everyone in the same way if there wasn't something coming from the mind. So you wouldn't have these 6 different perceptions of a mother, a daughter, a wife, someone who harms me, someone who benefits me. So this would be impossible if there wasn't something coming from the side of the mind. So something is coming from the side of the mind, and therefore you have these different perception of a person, as a mother, as a daughter, etc. So therefore, if we understand that it's due to the designation, the imputing, the mind imputing, our awareness imputing, so therefore afflictions arise. If we understand that situation, if we understand that idea or that reality, then whether love arises or not, whether afflictions arise or not, they have to do with our attitude. So we can understand that it's our attitude which can generate love. On the basis of this attitude, we can adopt a specific attitude which leads to the arisal of love. Or we can adopt a certain attitude which can lead us, which can help us to overcome the afflictions. So actually there's an analogy for that the Buddha has described the situation we find ourselves in by way of an analogy. So the analogies here is of a person who draws, like an artist who paints or draws a very scary picture. And after he's drawn this scary picture, he gets so scared he faints. He's so scared of his own creation, he faints. So we're like that. Ordinary people, mundane people are like that, in the sense that being nice, something is beautiful, something is not beautiful, something is nice, something is not nice. We create this. In other words, well, creating in a sense, our mind designates and our mind imputes. And on the basis of that, we believe in that which we have created as existing truly there. And so therefore, attachment and anger, aversions, all these different afflictions arise as a result of that creation of our imputation by our mind. So this analogy, this example is something people are familiar with in my birth village. So the village I was born in. I come from a village in a place where at the time when I was born, when I grew up there was no electricity. So this was a village in which you lived at that time as you lived in the ancient times. So it's a very backward kind of village. So at that time, what happened was in the village, it was customary to sit around the fire at night and to eat together. And so Geshe-la's uncle, his father's brother, at some point he made fun, or just as a type of a joke, he got up, he started screaming, kind of manifesting fear. And all the women, all the girls got up and started screaming and started running away. And as a result of that, his father and his uncle also got scared. They all ran away. So everyone was screaming, running away. So they thought, when everyone ran away, the uncle, they thought, oh, there must be something that I haven't seen. They have seen something that is so scary, so I better run away myself. So we're like that. If someone else says, oh, this is really incredible, this is truly wonderful, etc., so then we act like that. Oh, we must be really like that. So here, this is an example, this is just an analogy, but actually what we're talking about is that objects are just imputed by the mind. But we need to understand the reasoning for that, because otherwise we do not generate an understanding of this in reality. So unless we apply the different reasons that establish that, we won't understand that. So, for instance, let's take the example of dependent arising. So, to explain the ideas, these concepts here on the basis of dependent arising. So, for instance, think of someone, a man who is 30 years old. So, let's say a year ago he was not a father. He didn't have a child at that time. So, a year ago he was not a father. Now he has a son. He has a child. He's a father. So when we talk about the brother of like a year ago, so let's call this man, the 30-year-old man, let's call him Tashi. So Tashi a year ago, who was not a father, and the present Tashi, the present person Tashi now, if we compare those two, what is the difference between the two really? So, in particular, let's say he gets a phone call from the hospital. Now you're a father. So a minute ago he was not a father. Then now he's a father. What is the difference between the two? The person who was not a father just before giving birth, and the person now who is now a father. It was just a few minutes. There's a difference of a few minutes. What is the difference? One is the father, one is not a father. But in terms of the actual person, what is the real difference between those two people? The mother changes a little bit. The mother actually changes. So, if she gives birth, her body changes. So there's some obvious changes. But for the father, there's no physical change. There's like no physical change from the father or from the person who was not a father and who's a father now. There's no physical changes that the father went through, but nonetheless, one is the father and one is not the father. So, for instance, in general, when we talk about someone getting a degree, so if you speak of, let's say, take the example of like a monastery or a monastic institution, well, you study for many, many years, and then as a result of your study, in the end, you get the Geshe degree. So you get this degree of being a Geshe as a result of the studies that you go through in the monastic institution. So what is... So let's leave the side, let's leave the example of a Geshe, let's take another example. Let's take the example of an abbot, becoming the abbot of one of the great monastic institutions. So what happens is there are certain candidates that are presented to His Holiness, a name of different candidates for becoming the abbot, and then His Holiness makes a decision, he makes an observation, and on the basis of this observation then, of those different candidates, an abbot is chosen. So from one moment to the next, a certain person, a particular candidate, now holds the title of being an abbot of one of these monastic institutions. So there's a huge difference in terms of the potential, the power they have, the status they have from one moment to the next. So basically, when the abbot is chosen, His Holiness puts a seal, he puts a stamp on it, basically, kind of confirming that this is now an abbot. So when we think about it in detail, when is the exact time that this candidate now can be called abbot? Is it the moment His Holiness lifts the seal? Is it the moment the seal hits the paper? When is the exact moment that this person now is the abbot? Is it when the seal is up? Is it when the seal hits the paper? What is the exact moment that we can now say, this is the abbot? When has the person really become an abbot? So therefore, we have to kind of, it's difficult to posit a moment, the exact moment we talk about this person as abbot or not. So there is a difference, of course. We need to be certain that actually there's a difference between someone being an abbot or not an abbot. If an abbot gives some instructions, then everyone listens. If someone is not an abbot, you can talk as much as you want, no one will listen to you. So there's a huge difference in terms of the weight of your speech, the weight of your instructions. But in actuality, in reality, if you look at the object, the person, the monk who has been a moment earlier has not been, was not an abbot, and who's now an abbot, there's no real difference. There's nothing found from the side of this monk, nothing that you can point at to say, now is the abbot, he's not the abbot. So from the side of the object, in reality, there's nothing to be found to say he's now an abbot. So here it seems to us that it's not just imputed by the mind. We have a sense that actually this abbot, he seems to be an abbot from his own side. There seems to be something that comes from the side of this person, but actually it's just the mind that imputes it. But actually, when he's newly elected as the abbot, we're not yet having that perception of him being truly an abbot. Initially, there's not that sense that he's truly an abbot when he's newly elected. So, for instance, Geshe is saying with regard to the mind, just designating, so the people, the monks who studied together with Geshe when he was still a student, so at that time many of his monk companions or classmates, they studied really well and they became abbots in the meantime, whereas Geshe says he didn't have the opportunity to study so well, so he never became an abbot. So when he meets them now, actually they have the status of being abbots. So when he meets them, first his kind of conception of them, the feeling with regard to them is like, oh, they're my friends. He kind of has this conception of them as like equals, as friends. So he has to remind himself, oh my God, they're abbots. So he actually has to remind himself to impute, to designate abbot onto these people. Then after some habituation of having accustomed himself to it, then after a few times when he meets them, so naturally there's a sense, oh, there's an abbot, so he's a little respectful towards them as abbots. So that should suffice. If you have questions. So actually, Gela said, well, before we go into the question and answer, so I've jumped a little bit before. So actually what I started off with was saying that we should analyze the causes of suffering. What are the causes that give rise to suffering? So So yesterday, His Holiness spoke of the fact that our problems, our sufferings come from a disrupted kind of mind. So the mind being disrupted, that was one aspect that His Holiness kind of spoke of. Another aspect was that he talked about the problems in this world, they come from anger and aversion, so hatred and anger. And again, what is the cause of those? So His Holiness spoke of the causes of our sufferings, of our problems from the point of view of those two aspects, of the mind being disrupted and from the point of view of anger and world peace, etc. If you have questions, please start writing them down and pass them to me, please. So with regard to our problems, we are mostly aware actually that our anger, our competitiveness, jealousy, arrogance and so forth, those are actually the result of, that our problems are a result of those afflictions. This is what we are aware of. So, for instance, this is something, there's a difference here, for instance, of knowing that our problems arise from the affliction. So a villager, for instance, when they get sick, so when they experience the feeling of suffering, there seems to be some sickness, some problem that they can actually point at, something that is very solid and concrete, something you can point at. So for a villager, this is how the sickness appears. But I'm a villager. So actually, Gela says, if I talk about villages, I'm like that actually. So he's saying, like, for instance, when I experience headaches, so for many years I've experienced headaches. So initially I never really paid attention to those headaches. There was just a sense of this pain kind of covering my head. But when I analyzed, at some point I analyzed in more detail, and I found there was a spot. So Geshe-la pointed at the spot towards the left of his, the back of his head. So this was actually the place where the pain came from. This was kind of the main point. He was able to detect that. But then after that, so I was aware of being sick, so I went to a doctor, and the doctor checked me out. They checked my body, and some would say the problem is my kidneys, or the kind of nerves around the kidneys. Some would say it's a problem related to the heart. So after having done these checkups, then slowly treatment can take place because of understanding what the cause is. So likewise, when we talk about our afflictions, so there's anger, there's attachment, etc. So we just have a rough sense of these afflictions, but we're not really able to actually point at this awareness that is anger. This awareness is arrogance. So we need to actually identify precisely, this is anger, this mind has arisen as anger, this mind has arisen as jealousy, this mind has arisen as arrogance, and so forth. So to be able to individually identify these different states of mind, these different states of afflictions. So when we say again angry, I'm angry. If we check the entire body from the top of the head to our toes all the way down, there's not a part that we can say is angry. So actually, when we say we are angry also with regard to the mind, with regard to the awareness, so many different types of consciousness in our mental continuum. So there are different types of consciousness, there are different types of mental factors. over 100 different types of mental factors. And of those different types of mental factors, there's only one single mental factor that we can identify as being the mental factor of anger. So once we can point at that, we can point at that particular anger, then we can identify that as being the sickness, as being that cause. That is something bad. That is something I don't need. And so we can throw it. We can get rid of it. So actually, with regard to anger, understanding the disadvantages of anger, that is actually relatively easy. Being able to see that this is problematic, that this is something that causes us trouble, that's relatively easy. So, but then what is a little bit more difficult is once we've identified the anger, well then what is the cause of the anger? It is attachment, it is desire, attachment and desire that gives rise to the anger. Now that is a little harder to identify. For us, we're not necessarily aware of that attachment that gives rise to the anger. So how do we come to know this? How can we come to know that anger is a result of desire? Well, if you look at, for instance, things like objects that are not really beneficial to us, so objects that they don't benefit us, if someone takes them away or destroys them, there's not really a reaction. We're not upset as a result of that. So, for instance, if you take this piece of toilet paper or this handkerchief, this paper handkerchief, if someone took it and were to throw it away or break it, or like whatever, nothing would happen. You wouldn't get unhappy. But if someone took this book, so Geshe just showed his book. So if someone came along and took his book, that'd be different. He'd get angry. Why? Why is that? So I have no attachment, I have no desire, no attachment with regard to this paper towel, but I have attachment towards the book. Likewise with regard here to the paper towel here, so if it gets dirty, if it tears, I won't get angry, I won't get upset with this paper towel becoming useless. So, but with regard to this hat, Genla just showed his hat. So that gets dirty. If I lose this, I would get upset. I would get upset if something happened to my hat. Why? So I have no attachment. I have no attachment for the paper towel, but for my hat, I have attachment for my head. So, for instance, if you have a new car, let's say you buy a new car, and then the car breaks down, of course it's very natural that you get upset. But if you have a new car and it gets a little dirty, there's some dust on the car and it looks a little dirty, some people get upset about that. Well, that is definitely a sign of attachment being too strong here. So if it rains on the car and you get upset, well, definitely the attachment is too strong with regard to that car. So actually, with regard to here, with regard to not having attachment towards an object, there's no unhappiness. If there's a little bit of attachment, like let's say there's 1% of attachment, that leads to 1% of unhappiness. If there's 10% of attachment, there's 10% of unhappiness. And if there's 100% attachment towards the object, there's 100% of unhappiness. Such an unhappiness, so you'll be so unhappy that if something happens to the object, you'll faint. You'll faint as a result of being so upset, as a result of the strong attachment. So with regard to my hat, actually I have a little bit attachment. The attachment is not too bad towards my hat, but because of the attachment, I make sure that it doesn't tear. I make sure that I don't break or I don't tear it in any way, or I make sure that I don't lose it. So actually, if I lose it, let's say I were to lose it and I can no longer find it, well, then actually there's nothing I can do. If I can't find it, well, then it's just my disadvantage. It's just me feeling unhappy that doesn't serve any purpose. And me getting unhappy has nothing to do with losing the object. It's really just that I have attachment. So the actual cause is my attachment directed at that object. Because I have attachment for that object, therefore I get unhappy. So the solution to my unhappiness, or the solution to removing my unhappiness, is actually removing my attachment towards the object. So this is the actual solution. So usually, of course, we make an effort trying not to be unhappy. So we're trying to solve the problem of unhappiness. We make an effort getting this, getting that, doing this, doing that. But we're actually not we're not removing the actual cause of our unhappiness. So we should actually make an effort towards removing the attachment. The attachment is that which really gives us unhappiness, which is really producing, that is causing us to be unhappy. So the actual cause, we need to make an effort to remove the actual cause, that which really causes our unhappiness. So temporarily, there is a remedy to attachment and desire. There is a remedy. The remedy is to think about the impermanence of the object by reflecting upon the fact that the object is in the nature of suffering, that it cannot give us true happiness. So by reflecting on these different ideas, then we can reduce, at least, we can temporarily reduce the attachment and the desire. But the actual antidote, the actual way to get rid of our desire or of our attachment, is to understand that in reality the object doesn't exist. The basis does not actually exist the way it appears to me. It is due to my mistaken appearance that attachment and so forth arise. So if I can remove that mistaken appearance, then I can totally, irrevocably or permanently can remove this attachment. I can remove this desire. However, from another side, seeing it from another perspective, understanding the lack of phenomena existing from their own side is something difficult. It is not easy to gain that understanding. So it's something we need to train in. We need to familiarize. We need to train in that understanding, study about it. And so just to get some understanding of that is difficult. And once we have an understanding of how phenomena really exist, we now need to bring it to a deeper level. We need to familiarize ourselves so that a feeling arises that really makes some changes. So, but once we work hard, as a result, if we then understand how phenomena really exist, it becomes very easy in the sense that no matter what affliction there is, our understanding of reality serves as an antidote to all of those. Any type of affliction can be reduced or overcome by understanding reality. So, for instance, usually when we think of the remedy, an antidote or remedy to the afflictions, we think of different afflictions. So the different types such as aversion, anger, desire, competitiveness, jealousy, and so forth. So there are these different types and there are different remedies. So when we speak of love and compassion as a remedy to anger, well, yeah, those reduce the anger. Love and compassion reduce anger. However, they're not helpfulness for reducing our attachment. So love and compassion do not help us to reduce our attachment. Whereas on the other hand, if we realize the lack of existence of phenomena from their own side, then that becomes an antidote to all phenomena. To all affliction. So actually when we have desire, we exaggerate the attractiveness, we exaggerate the positive qualities of an object. When we have anger, we exaggerate the negative qualities of an object. But when we understand that those don't really exist, that they don't exist inherently, those positive qualities, those negative qualities, then this exaggeration with regard to good and bad qualities cannot take place, and therefore the anger which exaggerates the negative qualities, that is reduced. The attachment which exaggerates the positive qualities of the object of attachment, that is reduced. Now let's start with questions. Are there any questions? What is the importance of the first chapter? What is the kind of the essence of this first chapter of the Mula Madhyamika, that is of Buddhapalita's commentaries? Therefore, what is the essence of this first chapter? So the first chapter teaches the lack of existence from its own side. So basically, it teaches, emptiness of phenomena in the sense of lack of existence from its own side. So, so the first chapter is basically with regard to a result, looking at a result, analyzing a result. We say a result has arisen, has been generated or produced by its cause. But if it exists inherently, then it does not work. It wouldn't work that a phenomenon has risen from its own cause. So we need to, when we analyze a result having been produced by its own cause, when we search for such a result, for such a cause, we cannot find it in reality. So when we look for this production, upon engaging in ultimate analysis, we're unable to find it. So therefore, a result can actually not arise if it exists inherently. So if there were inherent existence, we couldn't have a result. So since it doesn't exist inherently, therefore phenomena such as cause and effect, they can actually exist. So this is what the first chapter examines or analyzes. So when we say, so having arisen independence on a cause, having been generated or produced by a cause, they have the same meaning. So when I use these words here, they have the same meaning. Produced by a cause, having arisen independence on a cause. So these are synonymous.
由因而形成和由因而生呢，虽然我们说生和形的这两个不同的字，可是它们的概念其实是一样的。
So here when we talk about the seed and the sprout, this is just an example to get our mind used to it and familiarize ourselves with these ideas. But then later when, for instance, we get angry, we should apply the same reasoning to anger in the sense that we get angry because we identify an object that has harmed us. So this is the cause of my problem, we think. This is the problem. This person caused the problem. They're the cause of my difficulties, etc. But then if we analyze the way we apply the analysis is described in the first chapter, then we can come to understand that there's no inherent cause that gave inherently rise to my problems. And that reduces the anger. If we understand there is no inherent production of an inherent problem here, so by understanding this production of a cause giving rise to a result, here the result being my problems, well, if it doesn't exist inherently, the anger will be reduced. So, but if we don't talk about in reality, etc., if we just talk about it from the point of view of a conventional reality, but then yeah, from a conventional point of view, this other person has caused me trouble. We can accept that conventionally, that is the case. So if we do not accept the conventional existence, that phenomena exist conventionally, would that be stupid? Because we become like stupid. We would no longer be able to differentiate between that which benefits me and between that which harms me. So we wouldn't be on a conventional level. It's therefore important to be able to differentiate between that which is harmful and between that which is beneficial. So if we consider phenomena being harmful, being beneficial, etc., from the point of view of just a conventional existence, we will be able to react appropriately. We will be able to engage in an appropriate action to something beneficial or something harmful. However, if we perceive the object not conventionally, but as ultimately being beneficial and harmful, then the mind will exaggerate. It will project and anger and attachment arise. So therefore, we need to understand that phenomena don't exist ultimately in that way, which will get rid of this projection and which will get rid of the anger and attachment. tanda condition di tanda tene tu chukse tanda sevu mundu sevu me tanda di tokcho ane che round tu chukse ti chi sorona yana tabata so ne chena round tu ba yona di yona de condition. So the question is, yesterday again I said that whatever exists independent on something else. So this person who asked the question is saying this is not yet clear. Therefore, could Geshe talk about what is the meaning of dependence? In other words, if hypothetically, independent, sorry, if hypothetically phenomena were to exist independently, how would they? 입니다. 우리 되는 주부 주실라나다 되는 주부 세디 세부 문도 단기 문도 사체는 다 디기 독초 론드 주바데스라 사이 게나 론드 주부 주시치 제시시표로나 디기 독초 론드 주부 주시라다 다부 타서 원래 체나 유나 이 유나 반대 나데나 제가 디 인자 가라기 이 독초기가 어느 주부터 시시지나 这个题目是问到说呢，在昨天对昨天课程，阁下所说的观待成立，由观待而成立这个观点，这个论述呢感觉到不清楚这样子。那为了让这个论述能够更清楚的一步，就如果我从反方面来说，就是如果自主成立或是自在成立，或者由自己方面成立是有的话，那它会是一种怎么样的方式呢？ 제가 아무도 세부 수행에 파지 세번에 이게 뛰는 쪽으로 세번은 내가 So Ginla is saying, actually, with regard to saying what does it mean to exist dependently? So Ginla is saying, instead of explaining independent existence, it is easier first to explain dependent existence. So by explaining dependent existence, phenomena being interdependent will become clearer. 这样子，不如我们就把观待成立的标准讲得更清楚，然后观待成立的反面就是自在成立，这样子你才会能够真的对自在成立的一个标准或者是界限掌握得更清楚。그래서对你主要的能力，跟我们去中间是那个对渐渐比较送出了啊，你的对他渐渐比较送出接不穿呢，你多少比当然我们主了，你知道吧？那差了比较送到了差。 So when we talk about dependence having been established independence, so dependent arising, dependent establishment here, here there are three types of dependence. As Holiness usually talks of three types. So these three types, some coarser, some subtler, when one comes to an understanding, when one understands those three types of dependence, dependent arising will become clearer. So isn't it clear the dependence on causes and conditions? Isn't that very clear in and of itself? So for instance, when we're hot, you put on the air conditioning, we put on the AC. So it's the becoming cooler, cooling down is the result of the AC. So this is pretty clear that the cause here is the air conditioner, which gives rise to us feeling cool. Is the cause for us cooling down. So because we understand that, because we realize that when we're hot, we put on the AC. And when we are too cold, we put down the cold. We make it a little warmer. And when it's cold, when it's too hot again, we put up the AC again. So therefore, this room being cold or warm, etc., it depends on causes and conditions. It does not exist independently. So the warmth in this room, the temperature in this room, does not depend on causes and does not exist in and of itself independently, but rather it depends on causes and conditions that are responsible, that give rise to the temperature. So here, when we say something depends on causes and conditions, so here this this takes us towards impermanence. So something needs to change in order for it to be dependent on causes and conditions. It needs to change. So it takes us towards impermanence. So it must be impermanent phenomena, therefore, that are dependent on causes and conditions. So, in dependence on certain causes and conditions, therefore an object can change. So, if these causes and conditions are complete, then an object can change accordingly. So here, these changes, that whether something is changing or not, it depends on causes and conditions. There's no independence in the sense that things just change without causes and conditions. Instead, they have to depend on certain causes and conditions for them to change. Change is not independently existent. So likewise, with regard to the second type of dependence, it's the dependence on parts or components. So without that, if we weren't dependent on these components or parts that make us who we are, then we would actually have to exist as a self-sufficient kind of person. So a self-sufficient person would be possible, but we do depend on parts, we depend on components, and so therefore this kind of self-sufficiency is not possible. So the first two are quite clear. So dependence on causes and conditions, dependence on parts, they're pretty clear. But the third type of dependence on imputation, that is not clear, in the sense that Geshe lifted up this book. He said, so this is a book. So this being a book, this depends on the words saying this is a book, and it depends on the attitude, the kind of thought that thinks this is a book. So the dependence on those two, that's not clear. So what we think is like, no matter whether we call it a book or not, whether we think it's a book or not, it actually is a book. It doesn't depend on our thoughts. It doesn't depend on applying this terminology. It's in and of itself a book. So this is how we think of it. So, therefore, in order to understand initially, or what needs to precede our understanding of this type of dependent arising, is to check, does the object really exist conventionally? Can it be found? Is there something that can be found that is called a book? So when we start analyzing, when we engage in ultimate analysis here, so is this page the book? Is that page the book? Is it the cover that is the book? Are all the parts the book? Does the book exist as separate from those parts? So we need to engage in analysis to find whether to see whether we can find a book. So if then we cannot find the book, then we cannot find something there, then we need to understand that here we're saying we take the book, we read the book. So how does the book actually exist? It just appears. It's basically just merely imputed. So in that sense, first we understand that it cannot be found, and only thereafter can we understand that the book is merely appearing to us, that the book is merely designated, imputed. So we can only really understand that level once we've seen that the book cannot be found. So with regard, therefore, to this last type of dependent arising, and of course, independence existence here. So to understand those two, that the phenomenon exists in dependence, especially from the point of view of the third level of dependence, and not existing independently, to understand that in a few minutes is impossible. It takes some time. It will take some time. So Geshe will not be able to explain this to you in a few moments. It'll take time. So actually, with regard to, if we go a little bit deeper, if we go into more detail, actually the idea that phenomena are dependent on conventions, that they're dependent on conventional imputation here, with regard to the book, that is easier to understand. So the book is merely designated as being a book. This we can comprehend to some degree. But if we think that all phenomena, whatever appears to our conceptual mind, is just imputed, is merely imputed, that is so much harder to understand. That everything that appears to us is dependent on us imputing it. So that's much harder to understand. So this is why some scholars kind of give this kind of explanation, saying that whatever appears to us is merely imputed. Whatever appears to our mind is merely imputed by our conceptual consciousness. The former Dalai Lama Kelsang, so he said it in one of his scriptures. The seventh Dalai Lama Kelsang, he said it in one of his scriptures that whatever appears to us is merely imputed. So whatever object that appears to our mind is an object that is designated or imputed. Mm-hmm. So here, therefore, when we say everything is under the power, is dependent on or under the control of consciousness, but consciousness does not exist independently. So even consciousness does not exist through its own power. Well, then, if you think about that, then all objectification disappears. You actually are able, as His Holiness said earlier, so all objectification will disappear as a result of this understanding. So does our attachment continue? If you have attachment in this life towards a husband or a child, for instance, does that type of attachment continue to a next life? And if it does, if that kind of attachment continues to a next life, how can we overcome it? So here we can apply the sutric and the sutric teachings and the tantric teachings here. So all of them talk about overcoming attachment in this life, attachment next life. So here eliminating attachment is described in all those scriptures. So actually, when we talk about desire, eliminating desire, actually there are different types of desire, different types of types, or we can kind of differentiate, or we can discriminate or discern between the different types of desire.
간다고 그러니까 그는 이 물을 찾는다고 그러나.
So let's take desire for money, desire towards money, or having desire, attachment towards money. Again, I'm saying he has money there, so he's looking for the money. He's searching for the money in it. So here, 100 rupees. So does this attachment that we have towards the money, is that a result of the blue color, the paper? Does this arise in dependence on the paper? Does this arise in dependence on the blue color of the 100 rupee note? Or do we have attachment or desire for the value of this 100 rupee note? There seems to be a difference. There needs to be a difference with regard to those two. So usually it's the value. We have attachment. We have attachment towards the value. This is why you can also give me 250 rupee notes or 10 rupee notes, because there's no attachment with regard to this note itself, but there's attachment towards the value. So if someone signs it, then I'm not attached towards the value of that. I'm not attached towards the value of this signature. So no one will give me 1,000 rupee notes in exchange for this 100 rupee notes. No one is going to give me 2,000 rupee notes in exchange to the 100 rupee notes. So actually, with regard to husband, wife, child, etc., if it's just a matter of having a wife, then you could exchange your wife with someone else. It's just a matter of having a woman, it doesn't really, if it was just that, then you could exchange this person for someone else. Anyone would do. So if you're attached to the actual person, not just the idea of having a wife, well, then it's difficult to exchange this person. So then also if we are attached to the beautiful face, well, if this person loses their beautiful face, then we lose our attachment. If the attachment is directed towards the beauty of the face, if it's gone, the attachment is gone. But with regard to love does not direct. Love is not directed towards. Is not directed towards the beautiful face, etc. It is directed at the fact that this person wants to be happy and does not want to suffer. So therefore, our happiness, our compassion, our love for this person, our love and compassion for that person is not reduced, cannot be lost, because this person will continue to wish to be happy. But with regard to the attachment, does it continue to the next life? That's a little bit difficult. This is difficult to answer. So actually, this is a little difficult to explain. So when we look at the history here, so just before the Buddha passed into Parinirvana, there was a non-Buddhist, a follower of a non-Buddhist system, and he thought that he had attained liberation. he didn't have any afflictions with regard to that. In the sense, he wasn't arrogant about it. He didn't think, he wasn't full of himself in terms of this sense of liberation, but he still felt very strongly that he had attained liberation, and because of that, he didn't want to see the Buddha. He didn't go to see the Buddha. So, but the Buddha was aware that this person, he has a connection with this person. So he was aware the person wouldn't come to see him, but he knew there was a connection and that this person has the potential to become liberated in this life. So therefore he called him. He called this person. So he said, a Sangha has to go. A Sangha has to go to call this man, who was actually not liberated, but thought he was liberated. Ananda, sorry. So therefore Ananda, he sent Ananda, so Ananda went to this past and he said, look, once the Buddha is gone, you can no longer ask any questions. So if you have any questions, this is the opportunity. So you should go now. This is your last opportunity. And so the man, okay, right, he wanted to have the opportunity to ask the Buddha a question, so he went. So they engaged in question and answer. The man asked questions to the Buddha, and as a result of that, receiving the answer, this man realized emptiness directly. So why did the Buddha actually send Ananda? The question here is, why did the Buddha send Ananda to call this person? Well, the reason was that Ananda, in a previous life, for many, many lifetimes, he was the father of this man. He was the father of this man, and because of the imprints, therefore, the moment Ananda told him, because of this imprint, therefore, when Ananda told him, it was like, okay, of course, he kind of listened to him because he had this strong imprint of him being a father. So there's another story of when the Buddha was with lots of Gelongs. So at that time, there was an old elderly lady. She kind of was, her clothes were torn. She looked dirty, and she looked kind of torn. Like she looked like a beggar. And when she saw the Buddha, she kind of tried to hug the Buddha. She said, "Oh my son, oh my son." And so as she tried to hug the Buddha, Ananda tried to stop her. He said, "Don't do this, don't do this." But the Buddha told Ananda not to stop her, and he allowed for this lady to hug the Buddha. And only after she had hugged the Buddha, she collected herself and she did prostrations and paid respect to the Buddha. And so the reason for her reaction, the strong emotional reaction was, and so the Buddha explained this, that for many lifetimes she was the Buddha's mother. So it was the ripening of these imprints in that moment that therefore she wanted to hug the Buddha. Immune? Alle hypnosis. Hypnosis, ja. Alle nie beordert das. So. So actually, when we talk about past and future lives, kind of relationships, it's difficult to believe this based on the sutric account. So actually, when we talk about like nowadays kind of methods, so hypnosis can be a powerful method with regard to generating a belief in past and future lives. So there's a story that Geshe heard about, the story of a woman, a mother, and her daughter, who had a very hard time to bond. It was very difficult for them to bond. Actually, after the girl was born, when she was put in the lap of the mother did not feel any love for this girl. So it was very difficult for her to feel any love. So even after a long time, they wouldn't bond. There was this gap between them. And so after the girl had grown up, she went to a different country, to a different place, and someone did a hypnosis. They hypnotized her and did some kind of past life regress, and so she found, she was in that hypnosis, in that session, it became clear that her mother and the daughter in this life, they were rivals. They were in love with the same person, and they were rivals. They hated each other. And so as a result of that, there was that resentment. And so when the girl came back and told her mother, the mother in the meantime had also done this kind of past life regress, and she had received the same kind of information. So both were able to resolve their problems, their difficulties, because they understood this resentment between them. The resentment between them was because they were rivals in the previous life. That was the only reason. And so there was this rivalry between them, but it was resolved because they both found out that this was their problem, and so therefore they started to love each other. So they were able to build a relationship of mother and daughter. So with regard to having attachment towards a child, well, if the attachment is a result of thinking, having a child, I'll be happy. Not having a child, I'll not be happy. If as a result of that, one has attachment towards a child, well then in the next life, one will have attachment towards another child. It doesn't have to be the same person, it can be someone else, because the attachment only arises as a result of having a child in general. So it doesn't make any difference who is going to be the child in the next life. So actually, if they were similar... So actually, if they look the same, those two people, so you're attached to a person in this lifetime, and then you meet them again in the next lifetime, if they look the same, it would make sense that you get attached to that person again. But, okay, so you might say, well, I don't know whether they don't look the same, but in terms of the story here, it's not likely that they look the same, because they were rivals in one life like men, and then born as a girl in this lifetime as women, so they're probably not the same. So therefore, if we can assume that they're not always looking the same. So it's not that you become attached to a person in this lifetime and the next because they look the same physically. And the mind we cannot perceive, so we cannot perceive the mind of the other person. So we're not attached to the body because they look similar, and the mind we cannot perceive. So it can only be the self we perceive some kind of... So therefore the only option we're left with is perceiving a separate type of self, a self that exists separate from mind and body. But then that doesn't exist. So since it doesn't exist, how can we actually again have desire for, or have attachment towards this person from one life to the next? How is that possible? So we have to give some answer. We have to give some answer to this. If you accept this to be the case, like there's such attachment that passes on, we have to explain that. And that's it. Is there a different question? Is there another? Do you have another question? Oh yeah, please. Can you pass it on? So the question is, if you're like a little child that doesn't know language yet, you haven't learned the word book yet. So how can you actually have the appearance of a book if you do not know the word book yet? So you haven't designated book yet on a particular object. So how can the book appear? So previously, Geshe was saying it can only appear if we have designated an object. So actually, with regard to one person, with respect to one person, someone says, this is my mother. One person says, this is my father. This is a husband. This is a friend. So on the basis of one person, it can be a friend, a husband, a son, etc. So different perception with regard to one person. So this makes sense actually, that there are different types of words or terms that we use, different conventions we use to describe, for instance, a mother or a daughter or a girlfriend or a friend or someone who we don't like. So without differentiating between a wife, a daughter, etc., we say there is a person, there is a human. So we apply the word human. So what does a child who hasn't learned language yet, what does a child perceive when they see a human, when they see a person? What do they perceive? So So actually, when we were to meet this child and what the person perceives, well, if we explain this person what this person is, so the husband would say, this is my wife. The child would say, this is my mother. So in that sense, like everyone would apply a different term. So if you ask other people, if they were to explain this one person to this child, well, one person would say, oh, this is my mother. One person would say, this is my wife. Another person would say, oh, this is my enemy, so don't treat this person well. We would get angry if they treat that person well, because this person is my enemy. So basically, this is what other people perceive, and they can express that. But we don't know what the child perceives. We have no idea what the child perceives. So we need to ask the child. We cannot really determine this is what the child perceives. So this is difficult. We need to ask, basically, we need to find out what is it that the child perceives.
的方式去解释而已，但是我们其实都没有办法真正解释到这个孩子到底看到了什么。现在真的真正的通讯网络的东西主要的，它分类为定义到这全家长这些学问的主要的，这些通别的都会往通把这些事情是主要的。
So in one of the scriptures by the Buddha, there is an explanation that objects that are harmful, such as weapons. So here the Buddha says that these harmful objects, these weapons, they exist through the power of conceptual consciousness. So this object that appears to us, that is an object here, this weapon here, exists through the power of a conceptual mind. So being an object here, it exists, it is explained that this exists through the power of a conceptual consciousness. But there can be different explanations with regard to this phrase, that this weapon exists as through the power of conceptual mind. So it seems when you kind of directly hear these words, so then right away you may think, okay, so that means that all you perceive is that which the conceptual mind designated. So what you perceive is that which the conceptual mind has imputed or has designated. So I'm not sure about that. I'm still analyzing, examining that. I still want to discuss it with others to become a little clearer about this. So I'm not sure myself. It's something I still examine. So So, for instance, in the Chittamatra school, there's the explanation that there are imprints left on conceptual mind. So, from the conceptual mind is left imprints on the mind, which then enable the eye consciousness, for instance, to perceive things, to see things. So, this has to not be explained just from one life's point of view. We can say that imprints were left on the mind, on the conceptual mind, and then in the next life, when these imprints ripen, we can perceive an object as a result of a previous life. So when we say unless there's a conceptual thought through the power of which an object... So saying that an eye consciousness sees something, perceives something, this is independence on the conceptual mind. Independence on the conceptual mind and eye consciousness perceives something. So therefore, again, even the eye consciousness, the sense consciousnesses, they depend on conceptual mind. So it's through the power of a conceptual mind that an eye consciousness perceives something. So we say, for instance, we see this book. We say we see with our eye consciousness, we see the book. But saying I see this book, it's a conceptual mind that thinks I see the book, and therefore we say I see the book. So without depending on the conceptual mind, we wouldn't be able to say that we see a book. So because what I see in actuality is the cover of the book. I see the cover of the book. I don't see anything other than the cover of the book. I don't see the back of the book, but I say I see the book. So my conceptual mind must be involved here because I don't see the entire book. And what we perceive here, what you perceive here is saying you see the back of this book. That's all you perceive. So therefore, what we actually see is just the behind of the back part of this book, or this particular part of the book. We don't see everything. So unless conceptual mind were involved, no way we could say I see the book on the basis of seeing something other than the book. Okay. So actually, likewise here, so when we say this is a book, this is a good book, this is a bad book, etc. So a book appears to us. So it seems there's something that can be actually we can point at. And so when we say I see the book and you see the book, are there two books? Actually, there are no two books. We both say in common. We will commonly say I see the book. So we use the term book in both cases. So they're not two books. We both say I see a book. Or all of us say we see a book. There's not more than one book. There's just one book. So, but when we analyze, what you see, I don't see. What I see, you don't see. So we all perceive something different when we analyze. There's nothing in common. There's nothing we perceive commonly. There's nothing we both all perceive when we invest. So that should suffice. So let's do the prayer we did yesterday, but instead of saying, may the mind of bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and that which has arisen grow, we use the wisdom realizing emptiness. Let's pray that this may arise, etc.